Next up, we've got Jim Stengel. Jim was previously the beloved global CMO of P&G. He's now an industry icon, CEO of his own company, host of the CMO podcast, author and speaker, and friend. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Andrea. Good to see you. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Jim, how are you? So for a minute, because you're not on a global television show where I think everybody knows, even though in our circles in Madison Avenue, advertising land, you are an absolute legend and a statue, but knowing there's so many different people here, why don't you give a little context on your career as a marketer and obviously the kind of iconic role you had and a little bit about this. So I'll give you 2 minutes to give a little context because I want the audience to know who you are.
Sure, Gary. Hey, man, I'm one of 6 kids, grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, small city, grew up in the city with a bunch of friends, played outside a lot, was an entrepreneur early on, doing whatever I could. You'll love this, Gary. I had a tie rental business when I was in parochial school.
I like that.
So I knocked on old guys' doors, asked if they had some of the old fat ties from the 40s. I rented them for $10 a day to my students. We started this movement of fat ties. The Monsignor busted me, called me a racketeer, and I was suspended and sent home. So it's all been uphill from there.
I mean, to me, when I hear that, it's so funny. I mean, we're in a slightly different age bracket, but even for me, when I was growing up, entrepreneurship was completely demonized. School is the only way. There was none of this. And when I hear the fat tie thing, knowing the Ralph Lauren story, I think you were a creative pioneer, my friend. Well,
I hope so. Anyway, I went from there to journalism, went to work at Time Inc., first job out of college, saw that the real action was on the business side. Went to business school, full ride, Penn State, from there to P&G. P&G, 25 years, all over the world, last 7 as chief marketing officer. Fell in love with this concept of brand purpose, having brands aspire to do more than provide a functional benefit to somehow change the world, make an impact that's natural for their history and their category. Left the company to start my own firm, all about purpose. I wanted to write about it, teach about it, help others do it. Been doing that for 12 years, investing in companies that are purpose-driven. And now I'm trying to crack this last area of brand purpose, which is how the hell do we measure it and find the causality with business results? And we're making great progress on that. There you are.
Jim,
I'm married, 2 great kids, love my wife.
I love that. You're a great dude and an inspiration for so many in the waters that I swim these days, which is the marketing landscape. Jim, where is the customer's attention, and how has that shifted in your perspective, knowing that P&G is the iconic television marketer of that generation? Where is the attention? When I ask that question, how do you frame that up, and what is your answer?
Consumers are looking to leaders and companies to make a difference. Right? Whatever data you look at, trust in government is down, way down, not just in our country, but in all countries. Trust in business and marketing is up. So it's our time. And there isn't one marketing leader right now in one company that isn't trying to embrace social action, social justice, responsibility, making a difference in people's lives, being of service.
Let me ask you a tough question. What percentage of these companies that are trying to do good do you feel are completely full of shit and are just trying to check the box of the moment? And how many of them, by percentage, your gut, and how many of them are actually living it?
It's 80-20 living it.
Now, let me ask you a tougher question because I have some context in this. I like that answer, but I'm going to ask you a tougher question. There are CMOs that you interact with and CEOs and board members as humans that I think are giving you the answer of such a beautiful answer of 80-20, which is a remarkable answer. How many, when I think of your answer, it makes sense to me because I think that's, when I think about all the CMOs and CEOs that you and I know as human beings, that it's 8 out of 10. But a lot of those human beings are looking for their companies to be the activists on their behalf. That's what they feel.
Yeah.
How many of those companies are actually going to be able to act once that person actually tries to get the operation to do it in a world of publicly traded board members, other constituents, and competing agendas? How does that manifest in real life against the intent of those small?
Yeah, Gary, it's a journey, but I can tell you the consumer is seeing a change. And, we used to say at P&G, they still say the consumer is the boss. and the consumer is expecting companies, brands, leaders to stand for something, to have a voice, and to do it in action.
Jim, why if the consumers of the voice, actually this is now, I'm sorry, Andrea, I'm going off script because I've got the guy in front of me. Why in a world where somebody like P&G, for example, and others says the consumers is boss, why are all the reports, internal MMMs, Nielsen's, Millward Brown, the entire currency, awards, Cannes, the articles, adage, why is everything in Madison Avenue Fortune 500 land that reports actually have very dirty data to the reality of the consumer? Why is there such a big ecosystem of fake reporting in marketing land? How did that happen? Because I sit in meetings constantly where the brand lift studies and everything's remarkable. You know this. This is what I came into. And I'm like, what is this bizarro world? Impressions and PR, but it got a Cannes Lion, but the business is down. Nothing about corporate America, Fortune 500 marketing, CPG life has been about the actual customer, even though everyone says it. All the currency is non-consumer centric.
Yeah, Gary, it's, you know, the great companies have empathy. They stay close to people. They get out with their teams. They're in the field. You know, people will see through all this bullshit. It's about action. And the research industry has been backward looking and not looking at behavior, not looking at causality with actions and results. And that's where we need to move the research field. That's what I'm working on. We've invested in a startup who has a really promising methodology to look at purpose activation and business results, the causality. So we're looking at the action and not what people are saying.
Do you think Fortune 500 brands, since that is such a strength of yours, are contemporary consumer-centric communicators where the attention is? Do you think the Coca-Colas, the Procters, the Krafts, the BMWs, the Mercedes, I can go on and on and on, Starbucks.
Yeah.
Are they great at knowing where the customer's attention is? And are they great at putting creative in front of them? Or did they lose their way once it went away from a traditional television structure?
I think they, you know, many of them foundered, lost their way, didn't, you know, all the stuff that they were trained in and were good at kind of became irrelevant. But I can tell you a silver lining to this crisis, Gary, is people are renewing and rebooting. You know, the podcast that I do with you and your team, you know, I've been talking to leaders twice a week, different leaders of the great brands of the world. What the hell's going on? How are you changing? How are your teams changing? People are going through a massive renewal and reboot. And the words I'm hearing are focus, passion, empathy, humanity, agility, more communication, social action. That's massively positive. And they're not just, this is real.
I love it.
Real. This is not a veneer. This is real. They're saying it with great resolve and great action and great commitments, by and large.
Outside of the altruism and the positioning, and I love this, just curious because I know the kind of audience we have. There's a lot of conversation in startup land and entrepreneur land of like, hey, Gary, stop teaching the big companies how to spend money on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram because the costs are going up.
Yeah.
Your personal, do you believe the creative industry respects the creative that goes in those channels? Or do you think that it's still above the line, below the line, that most brands don't understand that brand is being built here? They still kind of look at it as like, you know, DR down there, but brand is done over here. Like, do you see cracks in that foundation? Or do you still think like paying $2 million for a production for a TVC still feels right for my Rice-A-Roni brand or my Michelin tires? Or are you starting to see that people understand the real crack? Like where's your pulse on that?
Yeah, the cracks are in the foundation. People are starting to move. You know, there's this whole movement, I hate to use another buzzword, but people are looking at the experience of their brand with people. And when you're starting to think about, okay, how do people experience my brand? And you start looking at that, thinking about that, measuring that, that's not a TV ad, right? That's not a campaign. That's what's happening to the brand and the person daily on an interaction. Or is it frictionless? Is it happy? Is it delightful? Do they exceed expectations? So this whole movement toward looking at experience is a positive thing. So there are cracks in the foundation of above and below the line, but it's a massive icon, right?
All the kids that want to get into advertising, in the last second I got you here, what should be their modern thought of approaching that?
Be creative, be consumer-centric, be bold, stand out, don't be afraid. We need those ideas.
Art school or post content on social media or cold email Jim Stengel? Like, what are some of the hacks?
I would look for non-traditional, right? Art school, design school, just people who are who are ideas based and do look for ideas to solve problems. That's what a great agency's always done. It's what you guys do.
Jim, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for these 10
minutes. Gary, take care. Good to be with you.